Protect your loved ones. Save a granny. Granny managed to survive to become a granny because Granny was not and is not a fool, because Granny was and is responsible, because Granny was able to make decisions for herself and for other people, decisions that caused her and others to survive. Granny does not need you to tell her what she can and cannot do, who she can and cannot see, where she can and cannot be. What about chronically unwell or terminally ill grannies who would like to spend their twilight years or even their final days with their families and their friends? What number of deceased elderly who were forced to live in isolation, distant from the happiness in their lives, their friends and their family, would have traded every sterile, tedious, miserable, shitty minute of being separated and isolated for just a few moments of nearness and tenderness, a few moments of pleasure, a few moments of happiness. Oh, those halcyon days. Someone recently told me that their friend's parent had telephoned all of their children to inform them that they intended to commit suicide. This elderly person has been, or was, robbed of pleasure to such a great extent that they now prefer death. It is or was illegal for the children to visit their suicidal parent. It is illegal for them to congregate in remembrance. What about all of the dead elderly who were not memorialised or mourned? What about the impact of isolation? Social isolation is a potent risk factor for deconditioning and death in the elderly. Forced isolation might kill Granny. Forced isolation has killed and will continue to kill the elderly. Forced isolation imposed and imposes and enhanced and enhances the risk factors for death from COVID-19 in the most vulnerable group, the frail and the infirm. Protection equals the evolution of risk and vulnerability. There is no cure for death. Elderly people did not become elderly people by being ceaselessly bad at surviving. Granny has earned the right to decide for herself what things are important to her. It should not surprise you to learn that many of the isolated would have preferred not to have been, that they would rather have been sociable and loved. The emotional blackmail and condescending attitude that were deployed and are being deployed are making Granny's life worse. She was and is prevented from accessing the happiness and pleasure in her life. She was and is prevented from accessing the mechanisms of prophylaxis and maintenance and sustenance that are proximity and sociability. The intrusion of restriction and unfreedom into Granny's arrangement has caused, is causing, and will continue to cause Granny and Granny's friends and family to deteriorate and become susceptible to COVID-19 and a panoply of other illnesses and conditions of misery and suffering. Let Granny decide if she would like to be protected, because she might not want to be. She might want to make an exhibition of her courage and decisiveness, unwilling to be forced into hiding and made distant from everything that matters. Stop treating Granny like she is pathetic and incompetent. She is neither. Granny has become a slogan, a propaganda tactic, a chess piece. The strategy is an attempt to clean the board.